Hello and welcome to this Global Design Forum session during this year's London Design Festival. We're here to talk about Connected, which I've been following avidly over the past 5 months or so. The project, for those who don't know, launched at the Design Museum last week, and it's an experiment to explore how designers and makers adapt their working practices during lockdown. To do that, the American Hardwood Export Council joined forces with the furniture company Benchmark and asked 9 international designers to create a table and a seat for their own homes, made from a selection of 3 sustainable hardwoods: maple, cherry, and red oak. Coincidentally, I guess, the purpose of the project is essentially 3-pronged. It's looking at a material from AHEC's point of view. It's setting out to show, well, the market, the qualities of these particular timbers, which I think it's safe to say are maybe not that fashionable at the moment. It's investigating process. So in other words, how designers and makers work together when they can't physically meet and use a plethora of design platforms instead. And finally, it's looking at the possible future of our homes, asking whether we're properly equipped if our dining tables get turned into our office desks for a prolonged period of time, or if we need an entirely new type of typology of furniture. So, helping me to unpick all this is Sean Sutcliffe, co-designer, co-founder of Benchmark, and 3 of the 9 designers, 2 of which are with us now. I have Maria Jeglinska, who's waxing lyrical from Warsaw, Hayon, who's coming to us from Valencia, and we will be joined, I promise, by Archibong at some point during the next 45 minutes. So look, to kick off, I think we need to talk about the timbers themselves. Where do they come from and what are their qualities? And I'm guessing, Sean, that's one for you.
Well, the 3 timbers in question, as you so aptly said, somewhat out of fashion timbers at the moment, perhaps. Red oak, the family of red oaks, the maples, and the cherry wood. The qualities are different, as you'd expect, with 3 quite different species of timbers. The red oak performs in many ways very, very like the white oaks that we're much more familiar with in Europe, the Quercus robus. It is slightly lighter, it's slightly more flexible, it's more porous, but it's a very workable timber. We've done a lot of experimentation with it to check its properties. Its strength to weight ratio is actually better than the white oaks. So it's a good timber. Cherry wood is a personal favorite of mine. I love all the fruit woods. I love their fine grainness. I love the kind of smoothness of the texture, just like all fruit woods. It just has a surface that just longs to be stroked. It works really beautifully as well. And it used to be, I'm old enough to remember when it was ubiquitous and it seemed that almost everything we made was made of cherry wood. And in the last 20 years, we've hardly made anything out of cherry wood. So I'm delighted to be working in it again. And then the maples, the maple families, again, very fine grained. If it's hard maple, it's very dense. If it's soft maple, it's less dense, but they both work very well. They both take color really well. They've got good weight strength. From a craftsman's point of view, they're really good. But I mean, the important thing for me, the whole reason that underpins sort of why we are trying to do work with these 3 species is that collectively, these 3 species make up over 40% of the forest mass, the hardwood forest mass of North America, and they're out of fashion. Now, foresters can't afford for timbers to be out of fashion because you plant trees on a 100-year cycle or longer, and fashion might rotate on a few years. So we need to use a more diverse range of woods, and we need to use all the woods that the forest grows. To take a sustainable approach to furniture making, we need to use all the woods that grow in the forest, and we need to accept the sort of defects and characters that nature throws at us.
I mean, the question to ask there, Sean, is why do these timbers go out of fashion?
Oh, Lord, you'd have to ask someone much cleverer than me to know that. I have no idea.
You're all I've got, unfortunately.
From a craftsman's perspective, there is no reason at all for it to go out of fashion. So why, I mean, I can remember 30 years ago, talking to one of the big London furniture shops and saying, hey, how about we try some oak? And they said, oh, we will never sell oak. We'll never sell anything in oak. And now for the last 10 years, 15 years, everything that's been made has been made in oak. Oak and walnut. And it's kind of getting a bit, it's a bit samey. That's two species out of the hundreds that exist. So I really can't say what drives fashions in woods. Is it the color? Do people not like the colors? That's what I mean. It's really much more of a question, I think, for the designers who specify them to use than the craftsman who makes them.
Well, okay. Why don't we turn to the designers? Because I'm keen to know, in the first instance, why they want to do the project in the first place. Jaime, what appealed about the project in the first instance? Presumably, you don't need to do a project like this necessarily.
Well, for me, thank you for the question, Grant. For me, the most interesting thing was that I saw myself already in this sort of situation of being in a table and sort of trying to do my job while, living around this virus and being home all day full of stuff all over the place. And I thought that's quite interesting, because if I could move some way, if I could do something, I would actually rethink about a table. I never thought that somebody was going to ask me about that. But the funny thing is that it's a perfect question, because suddenly it was like, okay, somebody's thinking about this, and it's actually thinking in a very interesting way, trying to use wood, which is also another material that I love. I've been working with wood for so many years in different factories and different places. And it's extraordinary what you can do with it. The quality of what you can do with it, it's incredible. And now we were able to explore that, but also explore this strange situation in which everything is happening around the table. So I thought it was a great project, very, very new to me, very different approach. Also, everyone involved was interesting. And I thought this idea of being international, working with the material, trying to make something without being there, it's everything is a challenge. And I totally love challenges. That's first of all. I kind of think that life should be a challenge constantly. But that was an incredible challenge in all the ways, and this is why I loved it from day one. Yeah. Now it's been a learning curve. I think we have learned a lot doing things and online and working with the camera and seeing things all the time. And what is extraordinary to me today, it's how much detail and how much precision there is done in the work, being very much away. This is fantastic. Yeah.
I mean, it is fascinating how the situation has changed the way we think, because, on other occasions, a commission to design a table would seem pretty banal for a project such as this. But all of a sudden, it's changed the whole way we seem to think about how we live and how we work. I mean, Maria, what drew you to the project?
I think several things. I think there was a level, personal level, where, when I got the email with the invitation, we're exactly in this situation. So I thought it was really interesting reading about it, and then being at home, locked down, and completely changing the home situation, changing the table kitchen into a temporary office. And also, I also think it's very interesting to see the having the same topic with so many people, 9 designers involved, how each one of us will answer this. So I think that's really relevant. Also see there's not like one answer, but probably just one answer at a given time.
And is it a curious thing, designing for your homes, I wonder, rather than designing for a client or for a market? Did you have to think differently? Maria, should I turn that question to you to begin with?
Yeah, for me it was really difficult. And I think there's something I remembered, something Sean said, that it was like entering a candy shop. Like, there's so many possibilities and then so many, options. And it was really using as well the constraint of the project, not being able, because normally what would happen, I guess, that we would go probably once to visit Benchmark and see the workshop and discuss the project. Here there was like no possibility. So I think that the challenge was also, is part of the constraints, how to design something that is so communicative, to be able to work on it in that sense.
And Jaime, for you, is your house, are you surrounded by your own objects? Is this an unusual experience designing something specifically for your home?
Well, it's an interesting question, because I always design for myself, actually, first of all, and it's not a selfish thing. It's more like, it's like love yourself, then you can give love to the rest, right? Like it's an honest way of looking at design for me. It's like, if I do something I really love and I really enjoy, and it's actually tailor-made for something I would definitely would love to have, I think that's actually good for the rest. So for me, the design profession has always been, something in which you have to tell a story. And this project started with a great story. It's like, we're in the middle of this crazy moment. It's not a war, but it's almost like a war. We're like, we don't know what's going on. We have no freedom. It's crazy. We're always surrounded by things. Suddenly we're there and we're like enjoying this opportunity. To me, this was the best way to start this project. There's a great story behind. And, I design things for my home. Obviously, I have things surrounding me, but it's different when, I think Maria said something interesting there. Is that when you start a project, there's a story you wanna tell. Obviously, that's the storytelling of what we do, aside of the qualities and everything we're trying to bring forward. But also the fact of not visiting the manufacturers, so not seeing Sean, not seeing the atelier. For me, that's also like a super interesting part. You can change your design because you see a detail you love in the factory. You see somebody doing something specific. We didn't have that. Yeah. And this is something you had to imagine it. You had to, sort of rethink your way of designing, which is actually, for me, after 20 years, it's like, what am I doing? I haven't even seen that stuff. So many times I do just a little piece of it and then see what's going on in the factory. Yeah.
We're definitely going to get into that. Innie has joined us. Innie, welcome. Nice to see you. How are you?
Good.
I've just started talking to the other designers, but we were talking about why they wanted to do the project in the first place and what appealed to them about it. Maybe you could pick up on that from your side.
Yeah, I mean, I guess different from Jaime, I actually don't have a lot of opportunities to design things that are for me. So that was probably one of the things that was really interesting. And then the other thing I think that really intrigued me was designing something that's based on how we work, that's meant to go into a museum. Like I've done a task table before, I've done stuff that goes into contract market, and you kind of have to make things so that it plays well with everybody else's furniture and fulfills like very specific needs of like the workplace. But the way that I work is really specific, and and so the result is probably not a table that anyone else would use for work. So
I think we can say that about all 9 of them. I mean,
I think that's the most interesting thing, and it makes me excited to see everyone else's tables as well, because again, we're designing for ourselves. We're already in a profession that has pretty unique requirements, you could say, for work. So these work tables are probably not going to look like work tables.
Yeah. I mean, can I ask really quickly, because now we've established what appealed about the brief, but I'd also be interested to put it in some kind of context of how the pandemic and the virus has affected your respective practices. I mean, you have practices at different scales and you work in different ways. But maybe Jaime, to begin with, we'll talk to you, because I think you've probably got more staff than anybody else. How has it changed the way that you worked?
Well, it's like, I think the most important thing is that we don't travel. So for me, it's like, I think I travel 150 days a year, and also a lot of the projects happen outside of my country. 98% of the projects I do, they're abroad. So, it's been very hard for me and the team. And also we do a lot of modeling. We work a lot with materials and, also with the ateliers, and we're really professional into that. So going to see crystals, ceramics, bronze, all kinds of different materials. You're used to do half of the job somewhere else. So that's been, the fact of not moving, the fact of not sharing the everyday sort of ideas, with the team, with people you surround. A lot of the ideas we carry on, they're all based on dialogue and exploring and this kind of thing. So I think that human side of the job, and that idea of not getting to this great artisan that's going to change your mind, that's going to make you challenge yourself even more. it's missing. It's missing already for almost half a year. You know what I mean? And we're doing loads of different projects, interior design, art projects, like this project we're doing together. And it's complicated. It's not easy. We're restructuring our minds into that, trying to obviously have a lot of things online, but it's not the same. We're also like a team of, we also work with our hands a lot. So
how big is the team, Jaime?
Well, we're working in 2 offices. We have one in Italy and one in Spain, and we're about like 20 people working together. So it's very difficult. I've been working alone quite a lot, and I've been sharing my thoughts with my kids. Just kind of like, what do you think about this? Because they've been home like locked for so long. Well, now they're finally in school, but it's been crazy. You know what I mean? Like completely different mindset, completely different way of thinking. A lot of sketching, much more. A lot of explanations through video. A lot of discussions that happened to be very long because so many times it was not easy to make yourself understood. So it's been quite challenging. And at the same time, I would say it's very surprising because I've been seeing the work we've done, and I'm amazed about the quality and the detailing and everything. And I don't know, maybe I have to stay home forever. What am I gonna do if it gets better when I'm not there? So I don't know. But this is the biggest change. The human part of the job, I would say, that's the hard part to get used. That's the hard part. Yeah.
Ini, you work in a very different way, I believe, by yourself, where you are. How were you affected by the situation?
As far as the way that I work, wasn't affected that much, except for the fact that I'm traveling a lot less than I was last year. Which actually at the beginning of this whole situation was quite nice. It was for a long time I had been missing my old way of working. As I started getting more busy and doing more international projects, having more clients, all of that flying around meant that when I would be home, I'd have to jump straight into focusing on getting something, finished and sent out. Whereas at the beginning of the pandemic, I was able to go back to how, I originally was working, which would be wake up in the morning and maybe start by making music, maybe start by reading. It was a lot less pressure. I think it evolved as people became used to the new kind of Zoom lifestyle that we're in. And then things started to get a bit more hectic, and it got back into, pretty heavy, I guess you could say, negotiating, politicking, meeting, all of those things, as opposed to just pure creativity, which is also part of what influenced the piece that I made, was that I realized that, we had slowly shifted into me being trapped in my flat as opposed to walking around in nature like I would prefer to be doing to get inspiration, things like that. So I'd say that it's definitely been in waves. And I guess another thing that's different is the type of work that I'm doing right now is quite different than the work I was doing last year, because of what's happening to the different industries. There are different industries that are thriving right now versus others. And as a designer, trying to be nimble and figure out where we fit.
That's interesting. So what were you doing and what are you doing now?
Well, I think, a lot of my work was very client-based in terms of client-based product design. A lot of the stuff that I put out the last few years. And now, like I said, at the beginning, I was able to really focus. So, it allowed me to get out a lot more of the work that is going into the gallery space, for example, that is more kind of creative and less industry driven, a little bit more consulting, things like that. Going back to some of my technology, roots in industrial design roots, as opposed to just product design, those things became important. And then also taking on projects like the London Design Biennale, I don't think I would have been able to have the creative kind of space to take on a project of that size working alone if I was still trying to meet as many kind of client demands as I was last year.
Maria, can I turn to you? The Zoom lifestyle, how was it for you? I think you got into your studio probably before anybody else in the project.
Yeah, I think I got back around the end of May. But in the meantime, I've had to move studios, so that was still kind of a new dynamic. I would say that the pandemic didn't change, aside from maybe the work itself didn't change much, but from our previous conversation, I think what changed for me was more the fact of being at home, 24 hours, and that completely was an eye-opener on so many things, because there's lots of things that we, I guess, in our profession, we're able maybe to foresee or see certain patterns or and plan, and then this results in certain projects. And this was really being, at the same time, the cobaye and the observer, being in both situations. So this I thought was really, despite the sad situation, was quite interesting, just to see how much, that space is completely not fit for what we're going through. How to change it, and also thinking about objects not only separate from their context, but really much more in relation to the space. So I think that was.
I think I'm right in saying you have one assistant, the way that you work, and has that changed your relationship with her? This situation.
We worked throughout the pandemic via Skype. Every morning we had like a Skype meeting, and then we shared screens and so on. So this was a bit, I would say, sometimes frustrating in terms of finding how to communicate. Specifically, there were a lot of projects that started during the pandemic. So I think that phase is really crucial to have that, as Jaime said, the human aspect, and not being able, and it goes so much faster, if you're in the same room and then looking at things and discussing and brainstorming. And I'd say the online meetings are quite sometimes draining. So it requires a high level of concentration and really finding the right, working on the communication. So that's maybe something will be, I don't know, better at, maybe to continue working that way.
Can I ask what everybody's relationship with timber was? This is a project that's all about wood, it's about maple, it's about cherry, it's about red oak. Innie, what was your relationship with timber before the project started?
Actually, I used to have quite an intimate relationship with it before I actually became a professional designer. When I was in school, I spent a lot of time doing woodworking as a kid, starting age 12. And then even when I was in design school, you spend so much time in the shop. And so I really have an affinity for wood, especially live wood and wood that's, kind of fresh and unpredictable. So I kind of had an intimate relationship with it before, but started to, once getting into the professional space and working less with my hands and working more with manufacturers, and it kind of dwindled a bit. I was able to work with wood, with timber, with Say last year a bit, but it was really refreshing to work with Sean and his team. A, because they were knowledgeable, and B, because they exposed me to ways of working with wood that I hadn't seen before. That I thought I would, when I thought I was familiar with wood and working with timber, they showed me some very new things. So,
and did the timbers that were specified, did that influence the way that you designed?
Somewhat. So I think for me, where we started was, I knew that my approach to trying to do something sustainable was going to be to find a way to use wood that normally would be discarded. So more than the particular species, it was about figuring out what were the constraints that would come from trying to use wood that maybe didn't have a home, you could say. So in that sense, learning about the different species and where they would normally go and what would be considered unusable was important. But then also, I don't know if I'm spilling the beans, but I wanted my work table to be outdoor, and I don't think that they expected that. So then we had to start thinking about how to make this an outdoor working table with the species that we were going to be working with.
Okay, well, maybe we'll come back to that. Jaime, you've been at this for 20 years, as you've alluded to. You've worked in all sorts of different materials. But what about your relationship with timber?
Well, I think like for me, like timber is like it's like rice, you know. Like every country has a language with it, you know. Like you have the sushi, you have the paella, you know. You have all these kind of rices, yeah. Well, the same with timber. I think what I've learned in these years is that I've worked with different factories and different people, amazing people, I must say, with companies, but also with the galleries and so on, with artisans. And what I discovered is that it's very different to work in Denmark than to work in England than to work in Japan. It's like there's different types of joineries, there's different types of languages that happen. And, you know, it's a material that allows you, if you use it in the right way, you have right partners for it, like in this case, you know, you actually have so much to say. You know, it's like a poem, yeah? That you have to work with lightness, with the curves that you can produce, you know, the joinery of these, you know, there's so many little details that happen. So for me, it's always been a basic as a designer, as an artist. It's always been like, for me, like a basic to understand timber and to use it, you know, in many different facets, you know, to make a sculpture, to make a chair, to make, you know, a frame beautifully. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's incredible how much you can still learn every time because it is so sophisticated, you know. I see the results we have done right now. It's so different to what I could have done, you know, last year. You know, it's so different because languages, you know, the way we see timber, the way we work with it, the way we express it, it comes into something very fantastic. It's so detailed, you know, so sophisticated. It's because it's handmade at the end, you know, it's made by humans. It has a different type of approach. So I still think it's a material that will, you know, it's the first one I knew, yeah. As you know, it happened to me the same than my fellow designers, is that I've worked when I was in school with it, but still I think I will die with it. You see what I mean? Well, surely because I will die with a pen, which also it's wood. Yeah, but nevertheless, what I say is that it's always like an enriching material. It's always teaching you something, you know. And this is my relationship with it. It's a great material to do things and to express yourself in a very sophisticated way. Yeah?
So you had this choice of three. Which did you choose and why?
Well, it was really hard to choose, actually, for me. I mean, I think we had a big discussion about it. The cherry was for me my favorite, yeah, and then, but also because of the grain. But it doesn't really change so much. I think the aspect for me of what I was very, you know, something I had clear in mind is that it had to be monomateric. It had to have the same finish all over the place, so it would look like a sculptural piece, like something that it's actually different. Curves and things melt together, but it looks like a unit, yeah? But I think the fact of how they use the grain with this type of wood was fantastic, and this is probably the best thing, you know, on the case of what I chose, yeah? So
okay.
That's
okay.
the
I mean, it's very notable in your piece. I mean,
yeah, it is.
You know, the grain has been worked, you know, that kind of
I saw
quite
that, yeah.
wide grain has worked really superbly, the way it runs through all the different elements. It's you need that sort of slight boldness of grain that you chose, that's to make that evident.
Exactly. Well, that's a surprise, huh? I didn't know that. You know, as usual, a surprise. Yeah.
Maria, your choice, your relationship with timber, and what you ended up choosing.
For me, timber, I started working with timber, but on a much smaller scale a few years ago. But that was mainly to do with the fact that I have a friend who's a wood turner. So very often the way I work sometimes is the human aspect sometimes draws me to the material because of a specific skill of a craftsman. So, and I think I've always been drawn to woods, but because of the fact that it's such a material that you can go, you know, from micro to macro, you know, from building houses. So, and there are so many techniques, and also have the feeling that the perception of wood has changed, specifically with in combination with the new technologies and the CNCs, you know. So it has completely a bit, yeah, there's a new language that I find really interesting that is happening now, seeing it. And I chose cherry woods, a bit like Jaime.
Good.
It's because the design is very simple that I did. So for me, it was really important to contrast it with the material that has a beautiful wood grain and has a warmth. And it was also important to highlight the material because the table is really big. So it was really about bringing out as much as I could the aesthetic of the material.
So just very quickly, because I'm keen to get Sean in, who's been sitting here very patiently since the first question. Could I get a top line from the three of you as to what it is you've actually created, just to whet people's appetites for when they definitely go to visit the Design Museum? So Maria, what is it that you've made and why?
I worked on, I would say more a sculptural piece. In between, I was really interested to work in something between object and the space, and almost a small architecture that creates a shell to the surrounding. And also I was interested I was looking at how, how the body defines space and how you define your own space within, specifically now, how, working from home, how do you do to define your own space? So it was really, small. And it started with the curve of the backrest.
I was going to say, it all started with a seat in your case,
yes,
which is quite interesting.
And then it informed, and then I used the same form. It's just a curve repeated, and it's the logic of the construction a bit.
Right. So, Innie, yours comes from a very different place, I suspect. Giant's Causeway was the beginning of the whole thing. Am I right?
Yeah, that was a geometric inspiration of mine. I think the main thing about the table is that it represents the type of work that I feel like has been missing from my life since, I guess, my career started ramping up. So it's an outdoor fantasy play work table. So one of the things that
that's been missing from my life as well, actually.
I have a feeling that it might get some, become popular to think that way. But I also was thinking a lot about creating an heirloom and creating a table that my daughter could grow with. So, a lot of the way that this, the kind of Giant's Causeway basalt formulation was manifested was in a way that would be fun for her. She loves to play with blocks. And also creating a table where I could have my area to work while she's building her little micro architectures was important. And, I hope to one day have like a home where this table could reside and the weeds can grow over it, and maybe, a grandchild someday could be playing at the same table.
That's a really charming sentiment. Jaime, it's over to you. What have you created?
Well, for me, the first thing I was thinking about all the tasks that you were doing, while we were in the lockdown, and this idea of like being able to work, being able to have a dinner with the kids alone, with my girlfriend and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. So I created something that it's called, I call it, mesa machine, which is like mesa is table in Spanish. So it's like a table machine. Yeah. And what I call table machine is like, I was thinking about the old, kind of Viennese type of chairs, which were able to fold. There's these ones from Wittmann that are like from Hoffman that are quite interesting from the past, that they are made in wood and they're able to do a lot of stuff. And I was thinking actually about something called, the Victorinox that everyone knows it. Yeah. You just take one of those and you get everything, the screwdriver, the knife, everything. So I thought that the table, the Swiss knife. Yeah. I thought that the table could do the same. Yeah. It could expand, it could reduce, it could have two places to sit, it could have places to share, places to organize everything together, So for me, it's a machine. It's kind of like, it's not a table anymore. It's a machine. So it sounds very rough, but then in opposition to the roughness of the title, it has that extreme challenge, for the manufacturers. So I think as a designer, as an artist, what I wanted is also to challenge Sean and everyone around and the wood, because I wanted to do something that was able to be refined, very delicate, very, you know, that Finn Yule will go and see it and say, wow, this is really well done. You know what I mean? Like the most extremely, you know, the most extreme, you know, extremely well done details. You know, this is what I wanted to achieve with these. So there is this sort of beauty of, and delicacy, you know, from everything around the table. It's like you can see it from every angle. It's beautiful. Then even if you go down, actually, I'm really proud of the below of the table, the part you don't even see, you know, and even functioning. I just saw 5 minutes ago, when you open and extend it, it suddenly is beautiful. It's like a machine. You can see, you know, how it moves. There is transparency. It's like a skeleton behind. And actually, we did that in purpose, that you feel it's not a unit anymore. It's actually, you're curious about why that table's like that. You can expand it. You can share moments. You can have privacy. You can have community. This is why I like that table. I think that's the challenge we got. It's sculptural, but at the same time, it's challenging the way we work with wood. This is the way to explain it, yeah?
So a machine for living, that has a bit of a...
A machine for living, a machine for living. And I'm really happy with it. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. You know, when it comes to this house, you know, everyone has to get out, you know, because we don't have any more space. But
so then we get to the making of all these.
What's that?
We're now going to the making of all this.
Yeah, yeah.
And Sean, we've had 3 examples of the 9 that you were going to make in really quite a short period of time. You're dealing with people, designers who come from across the spectrum, some at the more fine art of the spectrum, conceptual, others at the more industrial end of the spectrum. It must have been quite a challenge dealing with all this, right?
It's been exciting. I mean, there are 9 very, very different projects here, which is, given that the brief was identical to all 9 people, the fact that you've got 9 very diverse characters, and you know, our grain of rice has turned into, what was it, paella, risotto, sushi.
Yeah.
How do you eat rice in Poland, Maria?
We have this, it's called gąbki. So
Gąbki, that'll do me. Gąbki, okay.
There's always one.
Up.
You're not going to get 9 of these.
And in Switzerland, do you have a national rice dish?
No.
No.
They can get the risotto from
Actually, we
Italy.
do really in the UK. Maybe.
I'm sure they do. I don't know what it is.
So,
Sean, you're stretching
9 really different things. All of them. I mean, nobody set us a particularly easy challenge. Everybody came at this from their own perspective. And for me, one of the really interesting things is to, you know, I spend my life working with designers and architects, but then they're never designing for themselves, unless I'm doing something for their own homes, which, you know, we always try to avoid. You know, they're dealing at arm's length. They're dealing at a professional level. And so to work with the 9 of you, who I felt I've sort of, you know, seen a little bit into your hearts and homes. I've seen a little bit of your kind of personality, and because you are 9 very different people out of an identical brief, the variance is extraordinary, and that'll be apparent when you see it all at the Design Museum. I mean, I'm one of the very few people who's got the unusual privilege of seeing all 9, you know, develop. Nobody said it's a very easy task technically. I mean, each one has its technical challenges. Some are extreme, and some are modest. You know, hopefully we've overcome them all, and that's been a great thing for a craftsman to be pushed to come up with unusual solutions. Has been really joyful. It's been hugely popular in my workshop. You know, everyone's wanted to jump on this project and get in, and even those that aren't working on this project are sort of chipping in their ideas and, yeah, have you tried that? Or, whoa, that's not going to work. No, that's not going to work. Yes, it will. No, it won't. You know, it's kind of, it's been a very lively dialogue in the workshop. You know, from the sort of heart of a craftsman, it's been a real good challenge.
And from the making perspective, the maker's perspective, the use of digital technology, the fact that these designers couldn't come to the workshop, that must have been very strange.
Yeah, we've been doing it for some years, but never to the extent of this. Never to the extent where the designer's never been to the workshop. So it is there's been an interesting developing of trust, and because with the exception of one of the designers, this is 8 people I don't know and 1 that I do. So for the 8 that I didn't know, we came to each other as strangers, and it's taken a while to develop the right level of some trust and the language between ourselves. I'd like to think that we've managed to persuade most of you, all of you, to trust our judgment somewhat, to trust the judgment and trust in the heart of a craftsman. Because that's something that we do all, a maker has to do that. But normally we can seek the counsel of a designer or an architect who can come and visit and reassure us that we're on the right track. We've had to be a little bit braver, maybe. Some of the interesting challenges is that whilst we can deal with most of the technical things and most of the detailing, color has been really challenging because, all of our screens work differently. We get different color resolutions. So color's been really challenging. Texture has been kind of impossible to convey. So I can only stroke something and tell you in words what it feels like. That does not convey digitally. And then there's something about the presence of a piece that you have to stand before it to feel it. And that's why I'm going to be super excited when you do all eventually get to see your pieces at the Design Museum. Just to witness your reaction when you actually feel the presence, because there's something about the presence of a piece, its size, its proportion, that I suspect will surprise everyone. Even though I'd looked at them endlessly on screen, as they took shape in the workshop, I'm thinking, whoa, that's bigger than I thought, or that's smaller than I thought, or that's, I get surprises every day. And so I think it's going to be, I hope they're good surprises.
And do you think it's changed the way your makers think, Sean?
What the digital
they had to think in a different way because they can't rely on the designer to be there.
Yes, it's forced them to be more like a designer maker. I mean, obviously we have tried very hard at all points to defer to the aesthetic wishes of the designer. But, we have to impose some technical limitations. Say, actually, you can do that, but the table's going to wobble. Okay, let me explain why that's straight. We've had to put our foot down on a few things. It's a journey. And one of the things that, whilst there's been a huge saving of time, of travel, and that's both from a sustainability point of view and just a time usage point of view, that's in a way really good. Well, I did used to get a lot of emails done when I was traveling. Now, I'm really challenged to find, when do you do your emails? If you don't do them when you're sitting at the airport, sitting on the plane. I mean, that's when you do your emails. But I do think that there are limitations to it. To begin with, it was really exciting. Yes, we don't have to be together. We can do this digitally. And I think over the course of the 5 months or whatever it's been, we have seen limitations become pretty apparent, and overridingly it's this sense of the physical presence of something, it's sort of size and scale in relation to our human bodies that's missing. So I do look forward to when we can all travel again with some ease and come and visit, and I miss visitors in the workshop. I love all you guys coming to the workshop. It's kind of what makes it all fun for us. So we're bored of each other's company. There's 60 of us here. We're fed up with each other.
Can I throw that at the designers not being able to visit the workshop? This is difficult, right?
Yeah, it's very frustrating.
But it's always a fun part.
Yeah, that's the best.
Yeah, it's literally the best part of every project.
Yeah. So have you discovered any tangible benefits from working this way, I wonder? Inni, do you want to take that?
I mean, to be honest, because I'm just one guy, I did a lot of, figuring out how to be a one-man studio. And that usually entails a lot of, working digitally. making sure that my 3D models and technical drawings and everything like that are up to par for the manufacturer to work with. It was difficult to not get into the workshop as much as I usually would, but to be honest, Sean and his team made it so that it didn't feel that bad. I mean, they sent me samples, so I was able to, you know, they even built like sections of my table and sent them to me so that I could feel them, see them, touch them, and get everything together. So to be honest, I think that that knowing that it's possible is good, because I never would have agreed to do under normal circumstances a project where I didn't get into the shop. But at the same time, I don't necessarily want this to be the way that I work from now on. I think that there is, like Jaime pointed out, you lose the opportunity for certain types of novelty that come from being in the room with the experts. You know,
yeah. Lack of serendipity, seems to me.
Yeah.
Jaime, any benefits to working digitally in this way?
I think having more time for, you know, understanding what's going on in my city, because I'm always abroad, you know, like it's crazy. It's like I'm always traveling and I'm a foreigner even here. So I've been meeting everyone around my house. So that's pretty good. But for the rest, you know, benefits, I think, you know, it's quite interesting for me. I always worked on mine, you know, but there's always something on me that even if, you know, we have a big team, I'm always the one going into, I always thought that going into the, you know, into the atelier, into the places, you know, where things happen, it's actually a luxury, you know. I've always kept, after 20 years, I've always kept the idea of like, I want to go myself to see these things. And I've always been like that, you know. Because I find that it's like a luxury moment. You know, you're talking to experts, you're sharing thoughts, and there's always something that comes to your mind. And I'm with Sean with this idea of that, you know, we talk about the benefits, but something that is really hard is not being able to see the weight, not being able to see the tactility of a piece, you know, and the presence, obviously, that's extremely important. So, you know, that's actually the part I've been lacking. But for the rest, it's been a great experiment. I mean, you know, today it's possible to be home and be able to do a great job, you know. So it's like, it's kind of, I've learned a lot about it, you know. And, you know, I'm always going to the physiotherapist because I'm traveling too far away, you know, from here. So now I don't need it so much, you know. So
well, that actually dovetails with something I was going to ask to finish this session off, because we're reaching the end of our time. Do you feel you've learned anything from the project? Jaime, I'll stay with you on this. Have you
Say that again?
Have you learned anything from the project?
Well, I've learned a lot, you know, especially, you know, what I've learned, as I said, I've learned that this is possible, that we can do something amazing. I think, you know, I had the lack of human contact, you know, physically, but then I understood that this, you know, can be done anyway. Because when I was speaking to Sean and I was speaking about, you know, with everyone involved in the project, and even with my team, even though it was online, you know, we laugh about it, we make jokes about it, you know, we discuss loads of stuff. It was like being there anyway, you know. I even had a drink with one of the guys talking about the table once, you know. So it's all possible. So you learn a lot of things. You learn that you can really go on no matter what, and that ideas win. And ideas are always, and they're always going to win. You know, it's kind of crazy. If you're creative, you just, you know, there's something different about it, you know. There's something different about seeing society in a positive way. There's always, you know, we can do good things. We can create, we can, you know, bring forward everything in a good way, no matter if we're locked or fucked. Yeah, let's put it that way. It doesn't matter. If you can do anything, but you can still create, you can still be positive, you can still do beautiful things with a human touch. And at the end, I can see what the job of Sean has been, you know, with the team there in England. I can totally see the qualities of everyone working on it. You know, it's crazy how at the end there is that human touch and there is that tactility and everything. Even though I see it from a screen, I can see they've done it with love and with good energy. It's there, and this is fantastic. That's what I've learned about the project. Yeah.
Excellent. Maria, have you got a takeaway from the project?
I think it's the new, I mean, speaking about it as a new way of communication maybe might be too much, but it's just learning how to communicate and also adjusting, and also that becomes a constraint. So I think the design I did is also results from that. So I think that was a challenge, but as well as the constraints and the reality. So
very good, very good. Ini, over to you. Any takeaways?
Takeaways, yeah, drainage.
Did we go into detail about drainage?
Drainage is important. Aside from that, like, I guess I would just echo the same things that Maria and Jaime said. I mean, just taking away the fact that it's possible. I mean, also, I guess another thing that ended up happening with this project is the effect of things happening in the world in real time started to affect, the project as far as the layers of meaning that went into it. Whereas with other projects, I think I'm probably running around so much that I'm less in tune with like what's going on in the world in general. So I'd say that would be a big takeaway, because I'm not sure how many of my other pieces, started to become influenced so much along the journey by external factors, just because we were in such an extreme situation.
Yeah, that's lovely. Sean, the last word is yours.
If it's the last word, then
what have you learned, Sean?
What have I learned? I mean, I think we've definitely learned some of the better ways that we can work with video conferencing and remote working. We've also learned some of the limitations. So I think I'll better know how to do it in future. I think that I will know the key points at which I need designers or architects to come. I look at guys, actually, at this point you do need to come. And whether that's at the point of the mock-up, just to sense the physical presence and the weight, or whether it's, for the texture and the colors or whatever, because we can undoubtedly cut down on a lot of unnecessary traveling. But I've also learned that I really miss having visitors to the workshop. We've never worked from home. We can't work from home. We've worked throughout. So we've had each other's company, but we've certainly missed, we're in a workshop where we have designers and architects coming every day, or used to. And we're really looking forward to that resuming and just getting that input at a personal level, at a social level. And I suppose the last word is I'm just really looking forward to you all seeing it. Whenever that actually happens, I'm really looking forward to seeing your reaction to the physical presence of the piece.
Well, that's it. Our time is up. Thank you very much to Maria, to Ini, to Jaime, and to Sean. Connected runs at the Design Museum until, I believe, the 11th of October. Do go and have a visit. My name is Grant Gibson. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye to everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.